so enough about me. Let's move it over to Andi Gutmans. He is the Zen CEO and co-founder for our opening keynote. So for Andi, come on up. Let's welcome him.
Thanks, everyone. It's great to be here today. Welcome to the 7th annual ZendCon, and it's great to see such a huge crowd joining us. We have a lot to talk about today. You're going to hear about what Zend has been doing over the past year and hear from a variety of speakers. But before we get started, I'd like to thank our sponsors. I'd like to thank IBM, our platinum sponsor, Adobe, our gold sponsor, RightScale, silver sponsor, and GitHub, Tengen, Mastery, OSS Cube, JetBrains, our bronze sponsors, and all the other exhibitors and sponsors who've made this event happen. Also, a big thank you to SNS, who are the producers of this conference, and without them, we couldn't have made it happen. So let's give them a big hand. So we're going to be talking about today is the applications we're building and how those applications are changing. We really, when we think about at ZendCon, how are applications changing? What are you trying to accomplish? We kind of think about 3 disruptions that are happening right now. The first disruption is a mobile disruption, where you have to target multiple form factors, multiple user experiences. Take me as an example. I'm a 3-device person. I have my iPhone, an iPad, and a laptop. And the way I interact with those devices is very, very different. I create most of the content on my laptop. I kind of casually consume content, maybe do a bit of tagging on my iPad. And the iPhone, of course, is what I take everywhere. And I know that's top of the mind for most people here. There's also a big social aspect that's actually starting to creep into our applications, including business applications. So while, a few years ago, we experienced Facebook, and then Twitter came along, and those were a bit more in our private lives, we're seeing a lot of those ideas actually coming into our business apps. Probably the best example of that is Salesforce.com Chatter. So I don't know how many of you actually use that. But when Salesforce.com announced Chatter, I thought it was the dumbest idea. I felt like someone got really excited about Twitter there, decided to put Twitter into their enterprise app, and it was going to be a complete mess. Now, I happened to use Salesforce, and what I didn't realize at the time was what they had actually done. They took the idea of Twitter, but they actually did a very different implementation. What they allowed you to do is to actually follow not just people, but actually follow deals, support tickets, opportunities, accounts. So if you were a sales rep, you could actually follow your major accounts, you could follow opportunities, you could follow what problems your customers were having, and you get real-time alerts when something actually changes. So that's a really good example, and we're seeing more and more of those ideas actually morphing into ideas that have true value to business users and not only to the consumers. And I would say last but not least, major disruption around cloud, and I would say cloud is really multiple disruptions. You've got SaaS, right? You've got platform as a service, you have the services that applications are consuming. And so when we think about those disruptions, at Zend, we're of course focused at what ties all of those things together, and that's, as far as we're concerned, the web workload. The web workload is what's enabling these disruptions, it's what's tying them together, and that's of course what all of you are actually doing on a day-to-day basis. And so when we're thinking about how's the web workload going to change, we really think there are a few areas, and this is probably not a complete list, but definitely some key areas where you're actually starting to think differently. First, I already mentioned the user experience. User experiences are changing. The people who are mandating the applications actually, have their own experiences these days with their iPhone, their iPad, their laptops. And good enough is not good enough anymore. People are expecting great user experiences. The need to evolve applications much, much faster is definitely arising, especially with SaaS, but not only with SaaS. I think it also ties into the user experience and being able to iterate very quickly on applications. It requires companies not just to do agile development, but really think about agile operations and how do I move code that was written into production very, very quickly, but keep the same level of quality that I had in my 9 to 12-month release cycles. APIs everywhere. The way I look at it is, if your application isn't API enabled, it really doesn't have a long-term future. In the next generation of applications, it's all about the APIs. Those APIs are consumed by other services. They're consumed by mobile devices. And really, you have to think about APIs at a very early stage of building your application. We're, of course, very much focused at making that possible and making it easy. And elasticity, really the breadth of devices, the breadth of internet-connected devices, and the reach that applications have today requires your applications to be much more scalable, more elastic, and really be able to adapt to workloads that these days are really not that predictable anymore. And I think that's really the key point. There's a lot of unpredictability today, and you just have to be ready for it. And then last but not least, we're really in an era where things are moving very, very fast. And I'm sure everyone in the audience here has a hard time keeping up. HTML5 is probably a great example. It's really a de facto standard today. It hasn't been ratified yet, but everyone's using it already. And that's probably the difference between today and 5 years ago, because there's so much pressure to move quickly. The de facto standards are winning. And even though HTML5 will at some point be ratified, you're seeing Linux, HTML5, all these technologies hitting the market, and you have to consume them before you know that they're actually going to be long-lasting technologies. And so at Zen, when we think about these challenges, we really focus at 3 main areas. The first one is we believe that by leveraging the cloud, we can deliver a much, much better development experience. And we think there's an opportunity to actually deliver a very innovative quantum leap in development productivity. Our goal is to deliver the best scale-out production environment that will serve these applications. And third, and definitely not least, is to enable you to run those applications on the cloud of your choice. We don't believe in cloud infrastructure lock-in. Our goal is really to enable you to run these applications wherever you want to run them in a very, very consistent way. So we're actually announcing today is phpcloud.com. phpcloud.com is our way to deliver the best development and production environment for building cloud-based apps. And there are 3 main components to that. And we're going to talk about them in a bit more detail, and we're going to demo it also. The first one is Zen Developer Cloud. We've built a developer cloud in the public cloud where we think we can deliver a significantly better development experience and a significantly more productive development experience. We actually think development and production are very, very different. And so we've taken a very different approach to development where we believe that a very strong, flexible, integrated development environment that gives you real-time feedback on your code is a much, much more productive way to develop. And the cloud enables that. And I'll go into a bit more detail on what that means, but you'll see that there are a lot of characteristics in this developer cloud that are much better served in an as-a-service environment versus in a traditional, on-premise desktop environment. The second component is the Zen Application Fabric. That's really our production runtime that is elastic, scalable, highly available. It is built on Zen Server, completely API-enabled, automated, and pre-integrated into a variety of clouds. And of course, the third are the cloud partners that we have. And today we're going to be talking about 3 of them. IBM, Cloud Infrastructure, Rackspace, and Amazon. We're going to be supporting our Zen Application Fabric on all these clouds. RightScale is a partner of ours that's helping us enable some of these clouds. And in the future, that list is going to grow. And we're basically going to make it as easy as possible for you to just put code into the cloud and have that code be elastic, scalable, and available. So what's a developer cloud? The developer cloud, I think, is in my opinion, the coolest thing we've done since Zen Framework. I started the Zen Framework project in 2005. And I think the Zen Developer Cloud is another quantum leap in how we're enabling developers. As I said, we think the developer experience is unique, and most application platform vendors today in the market are really focused at production and put some lipstick on that to make it feel like a development environment. So they support like Git push, they do some very simple stuff, and make it feel developer-ish. Our approach is very, very different. We think development should stand on its own, and there's a lot you would do around development that shouldn't go into production that you can do to really make everyone much more productive. So there are a few elements to Developer Cloud. And by the way, everyone here in this room is going to get access to the technology preview. It's an invite-only technology preview right now, but every attendee at ZendCon is going to get invited. So first of all, it gives you an instant setup of a stack in the cloud in a matter of seconds. So this is not seconds like on an Amazon Instant Seconds, which really takes about 3 to 4 minutes. This is about 10 seconds. We provision a lightweight environment, a lightweight sandbox in the public cloud. We actually use Amazon on the back end to run it, but you're not getting an Amazon instance, you're getting a partial instance. And that's a fully functional stack that you can immediately develop to, and it's very, very productive. Because it ramps up so quickly, I'll talk about it a bit later, it also changes how you think about stacks and how quickly you actually ramp up sandboxes, because you can just ramp it up, do something, doesn't work out, you can throw it away, you can start with a new sandbox. It's very, very agile and very flexible. The second piece that we think is critical is tooling. And if you look at most application platforms today, tooling is pretty scarce. We have the strength that we're very strong at doing IDEs and very strong at creating those connections between the editors and the runtime. So we've actually created an SDK that we've wrapped in Zen Studio and Eclipse PDT and Command Line. And that is very strongly integrated with the Developer Cloud. So really, with your IDE, you can work very seamlessly with the Developer Cloud, as easy as just editing a file, hitting save, hitting refresh in your browser, and you actually see the change right away. So it's a super experience. You have debugging integrated. Everything flows very, very nicely. We're also open sourcing that SDK that we use to actually connect Zen Studio and Eclipse PDT to the Developer Cloud. So our goal is actually to enable other IDEs too. So we would like to enable NetBeans, enable PHP Storm. So the goal here is really to enable you no matter what development tool you like to use. We think troubleshooting is one of the areas where developers are spending most of their time. I know I definitely spend most of my time in GDB and Valgrind when I was doing PHP. And we've put a very big emphasis on making troubleshooting a lot easier in the cloud. So we don't only support regular debugging out of the box, which I would say is the obvious thing to support. We've actually taken our production functionality, code tracing, which is a really cool technology that records everything that happens when a PHP script runs. And if something goes wrong, it can show you a full trace of what happened. We've basically repurposed that production technology in a way that makes it very useful for developers. So you can actually get real-time alerts and real-time code traces of code you're actually working on. And even cooler than that, what we've done is we've created a browser toolbar, and you're going to see that in the demo, where if you're actually editing a file, hitting save, hitting refresh on the browser, even if it looks like everything's okay, but an error happens somewhere within PHP, you'll actually automatically get a balloon within your browser that tells you something went wrong, and you'll immediately be able to drill down and go and find the problem. So super cool, really productive, and very easy. Another area that we think the cloud actually enables is to take collaboration to the next level. If you think about it, today, developers are mostly collaborating at the source code level. So basically using some form of version control to exchange ideas, exchange code. We think that with the fact that everyone is in the public cloud, we can actually do a lot more around collaboration. So there's a really obvious thing you get for free by developing in the public cloud, which means you can actually send a URL to a friend of yours or to a team member, and it will actually work, as opposed to having a VMware workstation virtualized on your desktop And very few here probably have figured out how to get a URL sent over to a friend, even if it's in an on-premise environment. But we think we can take it to a whole new level. And so what you're going to see in the technology preview is a start at our vision and where we think we can go. But one of the things that we've actually done is we enable you to take snapshots of your environment as it stands. So we basically take a snapshot of your code, your configuration, and your database, so of the whole running stack and running application. And not only do we allow you to roll back on snapshots for yourself, if you did something to screw it up and you don't know how to fix it, you can just roll back to the previous version. But the cooler thing is you can actually share those snapshots with your team members or with product management. And so if you have a really hard problem and you need someone else to work on it, but you want to continue working on your code, you can actually just take a snapshot, send the URL to your team member, he can import it, and he'll get the exact same running application as you had, but in a whole different space, a whole different sandbox, and they can debug that, at that point in time. Same if you have to communicate with a product manager. You're done with whatever milestone you have to do, you take a snapshot, you send it to them, they can review it offline in the upcoming week, you can continue to work. So I think we're only scratching the surface right now in what is possible, but just by the sheer fact that you're all on the same public cloud and you're all in the same environment, these are the kind of things that we think we're going to be able to enable to just make the developer experience a lot more productive. By the way, I call this feature Git on drugs, because I think Git is really cool, is a really cool technology. By the way, we just adopted it for Zen Framework, and we're actually looking to adopt it for PHP. But Git does sharing at the source code level and collaboration at the source code level. We're actually taking it to the next level, which is we share at the application level. So we basically take the fully functional application and we enable you to fork it and basically share that application with someone else. And then last but not least, Zen Developer Cloud runs on our application fabric. So before you go into production, you're actually testing and developing to the exact same runtime that runs in production. The only real difference is that in production it's elastic and HA and has all the runtime functionality. But basically all the APIs are available in development that we deliver, and you can be much more certain that things are going to move to production in a good way. For those of you who missed it, in Zen Server 5.5 in September, we announced a deployment feature that basically allows you to package up your PHP application into a zip-like file, have some deployment descriptors there that can actually put dependencies, pre-post activate scripts, and that really makes the handoff from development to production a whole lot better and a whole lot more seamless. Those deployment packages work in the developer cloud. So when you're actually just doing ad hoc development, you can use FTPS, you can use Git to kind of write your code. But then as you get closer to actually handing off your application to production, you can start using the Zen Studio to build these packages and actually deploy them in the developer cloud so you can test those packages before you hand them over. The application fabric, our fast, elastic, dependable way to run PHP applications. As I said, it is built on Zen Server, has a lot of APIs enabled around it, so Zen Server can be completely automated, and it is pre-integrated into the IBM cloud, the Amazon cloud, and Rackspace, and we're going to do other pre-integrated solutions with other cloud vendors. So basically at the click of the button, you get this full environment out of the box. You can throw a deployment package onto that production system, and we will automatically scale it. We'll automatically provision the application, and so on and so forth. So we have auto-scaling. It's highly available. Application deployment isn't only one-time deployment. It also enables rollback if something went wrong. And also when you're auto-scaling, it actually will auto-deploy and auto-configure the new servers that are coming up. So you really have a turnkey solution for running your applications. And then there are a lot of other benefits to it. It's a managed environment. It's monitored. It has a production version of code tracing, and there's a lot of other benefits to making sure that your business-critical apps are running very, very well. I'm also really pleased to announce the beta of Zen Studio 9. We've worked very hard on Studio 9. I've already mentioned cloud support. It's fully integrated with Developer Cloud. You can also auto-deploy onto your test environment or staging environment from Zen Studio. We listened to you, and we added Git support. I think that was probably the #1 feature request that we got. And not only did we add Git support, we also added GitHub support. So we made it really easy to start a project from GitHub. We're big fans, and I'm sure a lot of people here are also fans. We've made debugging easier. We've really made the workflows easier. I already mentioned we support application deployment, so we have a way for you to configure these deployment packages in a visual way in the IDE, and you can create them from the IDE. And you're actually going to see later on, you can even deploy it in a drag-and-drop fashion. So you can take your project, drag it onto a deployment target. We automatically package it up and deploy it for you. Probably the most important, I would say, improvement in Zen Studio is we've put a huge amount of emphasis to make it faster and lighter. Another feedback we got was that Eclipse was too heavy, Zen Studio was too heavy. So not only have we put a lot of effort into actually optimizing the environment, we've also added a really cool functionality that enables you to choose exactly the functionality you need. And then we actually launch a customized version of Zen Studio for you that only has the components loaded that you need. And it's very, very easy to actually just mark stuff and unmark it, and just you have to restart your studio environment. So for example, if you're a Git user, not using Subversion, really at the click of the button, you turn off Subversion, you restart Zen Studio, and you get a much, much lighter weight environment. So think about it like Studio customized to your needs and not to what we think you need. And last but not least, it's built on Eclipse 3.7 and the Eclipse PDT version we pushed out in the summer. So you're also getting a lot of the innovation and work that has been done in the Eclipse ecosystem. So in projects like the Web Tools project at the Eclipse Foundation, where they've done a lot of work on improving HTML5 support, JavaScript support, and CSS3. So Studio 9 is available for download right now. Please download it. Give us feedback. We're very, very hungry for feedback. We've already had a small advisory board team that's been using it, has given us great feedback, both positive and things we should improve. And we're definitely looking forward to hearing from you. It's my pleasure now to invite on stage Kent Mitchell, Senior Director of Product Management at Zend. Kent has really been one of the driving forces behind phpcloud.com and behind making all the pieces of our solution working together. And I just want to warn you ahead of time, we're doing a live demo. So we're taking a big risk here because we have a lot of pieces, a lot of moving parts.
So how many people in here have had to do a live demo in front of a big crowd of people? How many people have done that with beta software? How about with beta software combined with a technology preview? How about you add in the little piece that the developers were working on last night? So I have a recording as a backup. I'm hoping I don't need it. So what Andi was talking about on Developer Cloud is pretty interesting stuff. Let me get out my old man glasses. As I've gotten older, I need these things now. Here you have the PHP Developer Cloud, Zen Developer Cloud. And what you have is this concept of containers. And within containers, you have applications. And when Andi was talking about being able to spin up a container quickly, let's just do that here. I'm going to go ahead and create a container. So this is actually creating a container that has Zen Server in it. It's going to pre-configure a database instance for me and give me a place that I can actually start playing in almost immediately. So within that short period of time, it actually created a complete running instance of Zen Server. And it's full Zen Server. I have code tracing, I have monitoring, I have job queuing, I have everything. It's deployed a simple application in there. And so now I have two containers. This one happens to have the same simple application in it. If you click on it, it says, hey, your container's up and running. When we didn't put something in there, people said, is it working? So we basically did this to put a simple view in there. Again, you have a container. You can come into this container, and you can delete this application if you want. If you say, well, I don't need that sample application anymore, I can come into Add, Remove Applications. I can delete it. I can use it. I can add new applications to the system. So I can create an empty vanilla PHP application. I can create an empty Zen framework application. So I might do that. Let's just create an empty Zen framework application. And I'll say deploy application. So it's going to create me the structure that Zen framework wants for an application, pre-configured, ready to go. There it is, up and running. Now that I have this thing up and running, I can do things like upload code into it through Git, because that's one way to do it. So here I can come in here for Git access, and it says, here's the URL you need to push your stuff with Git. I can turn on code tracing, so I can basically say everything that goes through this application, do a code trace, so I can use the Zen code tracing capabilities. Zen code tracing is sort of like a very powerful profiling kind of tool that monitors. Think of it as like a black box recorder for PHP. It tells you every place you went, everything that was going on, what all the variable parameters were, and other stuff. So it's a very good diagnostic tool. We also have other applications, as you saw out here. I'm going to take a little bit of time, save a little bit of time and not deploy these, but there's Drupal and Joomla and Magento and other applications. We put those out there because you might want to deploy Drupal and then develop a module to go with it. And that's the kind of thing that you need to be able to do in a development environment like this. So we want to be able to set up Drupal in such a way that you can actually run Drupal, but also develop an application. So I've got these two containers now. One of the other things I can do with a container, as Andy talked about, was take a snapshot. So I can say, well, I've got this ZendCon container. Before I do too much with it, let me just take a snapshot. I'm not that good at coming up with comments for snapshots. And it basically will take a snapshot, and you can see I've got a couple different snapshots out here in the system. And if I wanted to share one of these snapshots with a buddy, I could click on it. I could say it's shared. I give him this URL. He pastes this URL into his browser, and it'll go into his copy of the Zen Developer Cloud, and it'll basically clone that entire instance. So it's cloning the code, the Zen server setup, all of your extension settings. It's cloning your database content. So you're getting an exact running copy. It's a very, very lightweight sort of VMware-like thing, but it's very easy to pass around. And as Andy pointed out, it's in the public cloud. So, you can basically say to somebody here, just do this, and they can get it up and running in a few seconds. And again, you saw how fast it clones these containers. Again, if you need to revert back, basic functionality to revert back to a previous snapshot, so it'll show me snapshots that are out there and let me know which one I want to revert to, and I can do that in a fairly short period of time. So again, this is all really interesting. Once I have my applications out here, as I said, and I want to, load things into them with Git or something like that, there are other ways to do that. If I don't use Git, I can actually use things like SFTP. I can hook Zen Studio 8 up to it. But what's really interesting is the integration we've done to Zen Studio 9. So what I'm going to do is pop over to Zen Studio 9. This is Zen Studio 9. As Andy talked about, this idea of configuring what you need. So Zen Studio people like, because it had all this, the integration, it had integration to SVN, CVS, now Git. It had MyLAN support. It had this. It had that. Nobody in this room probably uses everything that Studio could do. And Studio was basically loading all of this stuff because you might want to be the guy that's going to use MyLAN. Now you can basically say, well, what is it that I really want to use? I want to use MyLAN. I want to use Git MyLAN support. So if I say, well, I need to get MyLAN support, and I click this, I can basically click that, and MyLAN, I can hit Apply Changes, and now Studio will load those integrations extensions in, and it'll be loaded for me. So that's what I need. But if I don't need something, I can turn it off as well. So by default, it comes out pretty lightweight. You pick what you want. And if you even do something like, if I said new project from SVN, and I don't even have SVN support clicked, it'll actually tell me up front, oh, I need to load the SVN support first. So as you do operations that require some of these things, it'll say, hey, I need to load that first. And so it's all integrated. I'm going to go ahead and actually create a new PHP project here. So I'm going to say I need a new project from GitHub. And I'm going to call it Keynote. So far, everything's gone flawlessly. Now that I've cursed myself, okay, there's my little GitHub program that I'm going to pull down. So I'm going to say Next. Now, here's where it gets interesting. I say, well, do I want to use deployment at all? Maybe I just want a project that I want to deploy it anywhere. Do I want to use my local web root, random PHP server, or do I want to use Zen deployment? And if I use Zen deployment, I've got my choice of going to Zen server, so maybe I have Zen server remotely, maybe I have a local Zen server, or the new PHP cloud. So I can come over here and just put in my PHP cloud credentials. And I need the private key that was created when I logged in and created my account in the first place. and I hit test connection, and hopefully it will say all is well. It does. I say finish. It comes up here in a second, and we'll say, okay, here's the 2 containers you have in the dev cloud. Which one do you want me to put this application in? I'm going to say, let's put it in this demo application, and I'm going to say finish. Next has got some libraries and stuff if I needed it. So it's basically going to extract this project from Git. It's going to create the project, and there. It's pulled this project down from Git, admittedly not the largest project in the world, but this is a demo. And you've got here the deployment information. So this is where you can start to put in deployment information for your application if you need it. So you could put in a summary, and you could put in the description. And, that's kind of interesting, but not really. You can also put in dependencies. So you can say, in order for this application to run, I need a particular PHP extension. So I can say, well, the extension I need is, I can never remember the names of the extensions. I need BZ2. So I can say that, and I need exactly which version of BZ2 and various other things. So I can specify information about the deployment environment. And if I try to deploy this application and those environment settings aren't there, it'll say, no can do. You don't have the right version of BZ2. Other examples of where you might do this is things like particular directives you want turned on, or a particular Zen framework version. So this is an idea of the deployment descriptor concept. We also have the concept of triggers, where you can say for pre and post, before it's staged, before it's put onto the server, here's a script that I want to run. After it's put on the server, here's a script that I want to run. Before I make it live, after I make it live. So these are things that allow you to automate database creation and various other kinds of activities. And of course, there are the corresponding undo when you're removing things from the server. Again, all of this is just going into an XML file, as Andy said, and it's being kept in sync. So all that was really interesting, but what I really want to do is run this application, because that's the interesting thing. So we've got these little sort of quick commands over here to the side. So I'm going to say launch the PHP application. It tells me you haven't saved this Keynote. Okay, here's where we all cross our fingers. No, that's the one thing I was expecting might go wrong. Gives me an opportunity to show you something interesting. How fast does Studio 9 start now? So that's Studio 9 starting up. Boom, boom, boom. And it's up. So if I'm lucky, that will be enough to have fixed that problem for me. It looks like it did. So I'm going to go ahead and start this up. And now it's basically going to take this application. Needed to build it first. It's going to deploy it out to the target. And then it's going to launch that in my browser. And here's the application that's running. And, it's throwing some little, Twitter feed things up here. Hopefully nobody said anything really stupid. Oh, hey, great job. All right. But what's more interesting here is this little sniffer that popped up. So it's basically saying, hey, look, you had a problem while this code was running. You might not have noticed it. It kind of looked like it worked. And how many people in here have written an application and said, well, it looks like it works, and ended up giving it to somebody, finding out it didn't actually work? Nobody did that in here. But what I can do is I can click on details here, and it'll literally pop up a little toolbar that shows me exactly what happened. And it's pulling all this information from Zen server. So I know I got a fatal PHP error. I know what the cookies were. I know what all the server settings were. I can see things like the stack trace. I can see exactly where the problem happened. So I know it's in this PHTML file at line 90. Okay? So I've got all of this information. I can even say, show me a code trace. And when I show the code trace, all right, yeah. Second time's a charm. There's the code trace in Studio. So when I say show me the code trace, it pops it right up in Studio. And I've got basically right here, all the information I have for a code trace. So I can look at where it flowed, how the program get here, where did it go, where were all the variables, and so forth. Again, this is a nice thing. I can go back to the PHP view. I could actually say launch this application in the debugger. We pre-configured all the debugging so that it'll launch the debugger event, go back into the debugger. Here I am ready to run the application in the debugger. I can start the application up, let it run. It'll basically pop out a failure message here in the console in a few seconds. Give me a few seconds. It's got to establish the connection to the cloud. And it's going to run that, pop up an error. Then it's going to run the JSON request. So there were actually 2 requests in this. The debugger tracked both of them. So if there was some error in there, if I'd set breakpoints, I would have been able to stop. But, realistically, guys, this is a really simple problem to look at. There's a, fatal PHP error. So if we look in the application, views, scripts, index, and we look at index.phml, and we kind of look here at this little problem, we can see that my typing skills are incredibly poor, and I could basically, probably use the right method. It might work a whole lot better. If I hit Control-S to save this file, the interesting thing is that it's actually automatically synchronized that out to the cloud for me. So if I come back over here and I just rerun this application, the change associated with that has actually already been made. And so now instead of a fatal PHP error, I have the date down at the bottom. So as soon as I make a change, as soon as I save it, my container is updated. So as you're doing development, you can basically be saving. Things are synchronizing constantly. And so you can just come over here and browse. And since there were no errors this time, I didn't get a little pop-up. If there had been another error in here, like sometimes if you run this thing, it's actually slow enough because Twitter has that behavior that occasionally it will say something like this. And it'll say, gee, you had some really slow requests where it was going out to Twitter. So these are the kinds of things you can look at and say, well, maybe I should cache my request to Twitter, various things like that. So this kind of visibility into what's going on is really interesting, and that's because behind the scenes here in your container is a full copy of ZendServer. So if we go into demo, for example, and we look at this, these two applications in here, I can actually say, well, go show me ZendServer. So behind the scenes is a full copy of ZendServer. So here's all the events that have been happening. Here's the applications that are deployed into the server. I can do things like change the rules and set up various things. So I've got a full access copy of ZendServer, and it's completely free. So you can use this. It's free. It's very lightweight. Great thing. But now I've built this thing. I probably want to run it someplace real. Well, that's at least good for this demo. So for example, in Amazon, I have a CloudFormation template. This CloudFormation template has a Zen server cluster manager. It has a database. Well, it's actually using RDS. Whoops. I guess it wanted me to log in. It has a database. It has a couple Zen servers in it. And I'm going to actually go ahead and do the deployment to that. So I'm going to pop back over to Studio. And I'm going to go back in here. And I'm going to say, show me the targets that I know about. And I'm going to add another one. So I'm going to add one that's a Zen server target this time. And it's at http://amzcm. You might wonder about that name. I didn't really feel like the really long elastic load balancer name for the thing. It needs a key, which is an API key. Let me get the key for that one real quick. This is a key that's in the Zen server UI, but it's a little easier to get it from a file that I have saved on my disk. I hit test connection, make sure I've typed everything correctly. I hit finish, and now I have a new deployment target. So how do I put the application on that target? I simply say deploy the application. I say put it in the Amazon 2 thing. I need to fix the URL up a little bit. Okay, my application's actually deployed. Believe it or not, it was that quick. I come back over here. There's my application running in Amazon. That's how fast it was. Now I'm going to do another one with RightScale and Rackspace. So here's RightScale Rackspace, and to prove that I'm not lying, here's the application not running in RightScale Rackspace. Over here in RightScale, I have a configuration running, and this is Rackspace, but I actually went out and modified it a little bit to show the power of RightScale. This is actually partly running in Rackspace and partly running in Amazon. It's actually got the load balancer in Amazon. It's got the Zen Server Cluster Manager and the databases and the Zen Server nodes in Rackspace. Why? Because I can. So I did it. I'm not sure this would be a good way to deploy anything in the future, but it shows the power of what you can do with RightScale. You could theoretically have one part of a cluster running in Rackspace, another cluster running in Amazon, so that if something did fail in Amazon, you'd have your Rackspace as a backup. Those are the kinds of things that this brings to the table. That's why we are a partner of RightScale's. So again, going back to Zen Server, back to Studio, and back to my targets view. I want to add another one. Again, same process. It's going to get a little boring at this point. Back to my key. I need the Racks key. Test the connection. Hopefully I typed everything correctly. Finish. Again, same idea. Deploy. This time to right scale and rack space. Finish. Okay, back to my browser. Remember, everybody said this didn't work. Yay, now it works. So that gives you an idea how quick it is. Now, the one thing that's kind of interesting about all of this is, this is all running from Studio, but what if you don't use Studio? So you say, well, I don't want to do everything through Studio. Oops. Hang on a second. So what I want to do is go to my desktop, and I'm going to actually open a command window. Hello, menu, please. Oh, that's nice. There we go. So I'm going to open a command window. And basically what Studio is doing is it's using the same APIs, the open source APIs Andy talked about, and we have a command line version of it. So if I cd to Zend, /workspaces, /fault workspaces, /Keynote, so I'm now in my Eclipse project, and I type Zend, you can see all the commands that you can do from the API. So you can create a project, update a project, clone it, list what projects or what applications are deployed. You can add targets, remove targets, update things from Git. These are all commands that are available. This is an open API, so you could integrate it into any IDE. You could even potentially call it from the IDE today using the command line directly. But what I'm going to do is do something like Zend list targets. And you can see that these are the 4 targets that I had defined in my system. And I'm going to say Zend add target -h http://IBM Smart Cloud. So we've got an IBM Smart Cloud integration -p c://. And this is the simpler way to pass in the key and everything. And of course I can't type. What did I type wrong? H, yeah, well, like I said, I'm not a good typist. So literally the target's now created if I want to deploy the application. Thank you. I got it now? All right. Thanks for the typo, heads up. So if I come right over here and I say, here's my IBM Smart Cloud instance, there's my application. So that gives you an idea of the level of functionality that's involved here and the kind of stuff that this integration can do. You can quickly develop an application in Dev Cloud. You can create containers, destroy containers. You got full access to Zen Server, completely free. You've got Studio all completely integrated to this. You've got these production deployments running on all these different platforms, running the application fabric. So that's the idea of what we're doing here. And I think you can see this is a pretty powerful thing. It's going to really help people out a lot. So I'll turn it back over to Andy. Thanks a lot, everybody. And let me get the slides back up here.
Great. Thank you very much, Kent. I have to say that, Kent wasn't lying. They were working till last night to make sure all the different pieces work. So kudos to Kent. And it's my pleasure now to invite on stage Michael Crandell, the CEO of RightScale, a very good partner of ours. We launched our joint solution earlier this year, and you saw that with RightScale, we're able to deploy on rack space on Amazon and even do multi-zone deployments.
Thank you. Thank you, Andy. Boy, I got to tell you, if there's one guy who can make PHP look sexy, it's Kent. Kent, great job, man. I just love seeing real demos, and it's an honor to be here with Zend, an incredible company that we're happy to partner with, and with everyone in the Zend community. So thanks very much for having us today. I wanted to say a few words about who we are at RightScale and why we're partnering, and also the title here, which is the Cloud Challenge. So for those of you who don't know us, RightScale is a cloud management platform. In simple terms, we kind of sit between the apps and services that you want to run and the cloud resource pools you want to run them on. And we provide automation, governance, and then a whole set of prepackaged solutions, which is what I'll be talking about a little bit today around our Zend RightScale solution pack for PHP. The RightScale's been around for 4.5 years, and the one thing that we've seen over and over as a challenge that folks face, and I've posed it here as the cloud challenge, is really, how do I get started in the cloud? It's as simple as that. We see it over and over. How do I get started in a way that is the right way in terms of best practices? So that's what I wanted to share a little bit about. That's really what our partnership is about. So the driver for the partnership originally, and we've been working together for quite a while, was really the best driver that you can have. It was customer demand. 37% of RightScale customers run PHP. I think it's the most used language on RightScale on all the clouds we support. And so we decided to work with the leader in PHP, which is Zend, to build what we call a solution pack, which is a ready-to-run configuration that includes the Zend app fabric as well as the underlying RightScale machinery to help you run a turnkey PHP cloud platform that's already built according to best practices. Now you can run this, you saw the example on Rackspace, you can also run the same configuration on Amazon and coming on private clouds like Eucalyptus, Cloud.com, and eventually OpenStack. And really what this is designed to provide, I think of as operational excellence. So what I mean by that is it's pretty easy to go throw PHP onto a server. But it's not really what we all want in our companies. What we want is an application fabric that's resilient to failure, that has high performance, and that can respond to different events, especially events in changing load. So what we're offering here together with Zend is really a true production reference cloud implementation of the Zend app fabric that's highly resilient, highly available, et cetera, and that runs across different cloud platforms. So one key thing about getting started is think about freedom of choice of which cloud resource pool you run on. And I say cloud resource pool because it might be one of 5 different regions in the Amazon cloud. Each of those is a separate resource pool. It might be another public cloud. Eventually, you may want to run the same thing internally. So very much in the spirit of what you've already seen, flexibility around the infrastructure resource pools you're using. And then, as Andy and Kent are fond of saying, this is a solution where you can lift the hood and get in and change elements in the engine. So you can add componentry, you can extend the solution, you can add different servers, and you can customize really all the way down to the OS level. I think what we're all getting at here, what you've seen throughout the presentation today, and really what we see every day in running on the cloud, is unprecedented power and flexibility. So we're all under the demand of delivering on agility. We all want to be able to allocate resources very, very quickly. That's the world that we're in. That's the expectation of our customers and users. We also need to do this economically, right? To optimize the spend, which means being able to pay for what you use and not pay for what you don't use, and be able to balance what you're running internally. There are different economics there, and what you run externally. But really, it's all in the backdrop of unprecedented geographical reach and the ability for business continuity using that. So if I were to pull up my mobile phone using the RightScale mobile app, I can launch this Zend PHP solution pack on RightScale in 5 different regions around the world from a phone and have it running in less than 10 minutes. That's the kind of unprecedented capability that we all have access to today. And really it means that there's a whole new world out there of developing for cloud and managing cloud if you're more on the IT system administration side. And I wanted to tell a little quick story, which I hesitated a little bit about just because it's very sensitive. Are there Apple fans in the room? Steve Jobs fans out there? So I am too. I think it's appropriate that we give him a little round of applause. Incredible human being. What you're seeing there on this graph is comes from a story. About 10 days ago, I was at a dinner with some press representatives and customers of RightScale in New York. And as we were sitting in the dinner, people started to get text messages about the sad news of Steve's death. And some of them had to leave. They were reporting on this, et cetera. Some of the customers who were staying, one of them supports a news site, a public-facing news site. And he brought up on his iPad this graph, which he sent to me later, which showed the beginning of the breaking news about Steve's death and how the system was responding. So, you know, we don't often go through that kind of extraordinary event that happened that night, although in certain businesses, those are with some frequency. We had another customer there who had a musical artist client of theirs that was going on Good Morning America the next day. But we also see these kinds of fluctuating demands day to day, day in and day out in our R&D operations, in dev and test, as well as in internally facing applications. The load does fluctuate. And so this is the kind of power that's available to us all if we harness it correctly. So ultimately, just wanted to wrap up with around this cloud challenge. You know, what we see today is cloud is no longer a fad. It's no longer a trend. It's a requirement for us all. And so in our partnership with Zend, we've focused on providing a quick way to get started with a best practices implementation that will really serve you well in relation to high availability, in relation to resiliency to failure and performance. And we hope you'll take a close look at it. As a sponsor, we have a booth here. My colleague Yuri is giving a talk tomorrow, so we hope you'll come visit us. And thank you very much for your time and attention.
It's my pleasure now to invite on stage Mac Devine. Mac Devine, we're very fortunate to have him come here because he was busy launching IBM Smart Cloud around the world the whole last week. Mac Devine's an IBM Distinguished Engineer, which is one of the highest technical accolades you can get at IBM. So maybe even more of a geek than I am. And Mac is the CTO of Cloud at IBM.
Right,
so Mac, why don't you come up here?
Sure.
So maybe you can share with the audience, you know, what IBM Smart Cloud is. You've just finished, you know, the initial launch.
Yeah, so with the IBM Smart Cloud, there's actually two major focus areas. One is focused, what we call Smart Cloud Enterprise, is really focused on a shared agile environment, really focused on the needs of the developer. And then we have our Smart Cloud Enterprise Plus, which is more kind of the production type of an environment. We also offer a set of managed services and solutions from IBM on top of what you get kind of out of the box with the Smart Cloud Enterprise.
So how do you see the app fabric fitting into, you know, the various versions of Smart Cloud?
So when we first started working together about a year ago, Zend and IBM around the Smart Cloud, one of the things that when we first met was that there was a commonality in terms of our philosophies, that there was a real need to have this agility, to remove obstacles for productivity. There's so much problems inside of our large enterprise IT shops today where there's a strain between the developer and the IT person. And so the amount of agility and flexibility that's built into the application fabric of Zend is a really good match of what we're trying to do with the Smart Cloud.
I'm sure, you know, Smart Cloud is very early on. You just did the major launch in the past week. I'm sure the audience would love to know what you guys have planned in the next 18 to 24 months and, you know, how is Smart Cloud going to evolve?
Yeah, so Andy's right. We're just kind of at the initial part of our journey towards our IBM Smart Cloud. One of the things that you'll see, and Andy actually mentioned this in the keynote, we talked about the impact of social collaboration, the impact of smart devices. And so I think over the next 12 months in particular, you'll see kind of smart device meets smart cloud. You'll see things like our IBM Smarter Planet initiatives, our Smarter Analytics, making services, those application services, available to developers so that you can programmatically interact with those application services and include them in the solutions that you're building.
Are there any services you're particularly excited about that you're going to be exposing there?
So we announced a set of application services last week, things around integration, analytics, some deployment services. We have what we call our IBM Workload Deployer, which you're familiar with Amazon with their cloud formation. It's very similar to that. And so one of the things that we'll be doing with Zend is just like Kent showed, where you had a cloud formation template and then using that to deploy the Zend server on Amazon. We'll have the similar kind of thing we'll do with the IBM Workload Deployer.
Okay. Well, Mac, thanks a lot for
All right.
coming.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you taking the time. So last but not least, I want to talk about a community project that today has hundreds of thousands of companies that are actually using it, a very large contributing community, and that's, of course, Zend Framework. Started Zend Framework in 2005. It's been a phenomenal success. It's a huge, vibrant community around it. It's really a community project. There have literally been over 100 people who have contributed code to Zend Framework 2.0. And when I think about Zend Framework 2.0, I really think it's probably the most substantial release we've done since the time we started the project, which was Zend Framework 0.1. And really the main reason is we've just gotten so much feedback over the years on what people want to do with Framework, where they want us to go. Framework 2 is, literally, I'd say, many components have been completely rewritten to kind of meet the next set of objectives. There is going to be a session today in this room at 11:15 by Matthew Wire-O'Finney, who's the Zend Framework lead. He can tell the whole Zend Framework 2 story much better than I can. We've replaced his event manager session, which is on the schedule at that time, just because we've had an overwhelming amount of requests to actually make that a Framework 2.0 overview. So those who are interested in the event manager session, it's going to be rescheduled to later during the conference. Just a few more things around Framework 2. It's designed for PHP 5.3, so it takes advantage of namespaces, closures, really takes full advantage of 5.3. It is much, much faster. It is much more consistent. Typically, first versions of frameworks and so on don't have full consistency. We've really made sure in Framework 2 we get full consistency. It's very extensible, and we are very excited about Framework 2 and where it's going. It's the first beta. We'd love for you to download it, give it a try, and let the community know where you think we should go with it. We already feel very comfortable in calling this a beta and starting to work towards a release candidate, but obviously it's heavily dependent on the feedback that we're getting. So that's also available for download right now. We have an announcement on the Zend Developer Zone on Zend Framework 2, and again at 11:15, you can hear Matthew do a full overview of Framework. There's also a session on the Developer Cloud. In your program, it's called Development in the 24th and a half Century. That was obviously because we didn't want to pre-announce the news, so we just made up a name. But it's going to be right after this session in the Grand Ballroom, and the one and only Kevin is going to be presenting that. And same with Studio 9. We didn't want to pre-announce it. We have two sessions that are not on the schedule on Studio 9. One is learning about the Zend SDK, which is today at 4 p.m. So that goes through the SDK that we used for the command line tools and for Studio 9 integration. And of course, as we said, that's going to be open source, and people are free to actually use that and integrate that into other tools. We may also talk about Hudson integration we did and Jenkins as part of the Zend SDK. And then Studio 9, on Wednesday at 5:15, we're going to have an overview of Studio 9 and a bit more of an in-depth review of that. So ready to summarize, as I said earlier, phpcloud.com is our goal. Our goal with phpcloud.com is to make it the best development and production environment for you. And we're doing that in three ways. One is really taking the development experience to a whole new level, innovating around the developer experience. Second is delivering the best runtime that is fast, elastic, dependable. And third, making sure you have choice and you can deploy to any cloud you want to deploy to. So thanks a lot. I'm going to hand it over to Kevin now. Kevin? Where's Kevin?
All right. right, insurance companies around the world can now breathe a sigh of relief because I was not sure I was going to make that stare. All right. That was more fun than I thought it would be. One of the things we want to do is we want to get your feedback. phpcloud.com is, like we said, it's a technology preview. Oh. I do, I work out. It's a technology preview, and we want to get your feedback. Not just feedback, but we want to get your ideas as well. To do that, there are two ways you can do that. One of them is you can go to the Zen booth in the exhibit hall. There will be people there all the time who want to talk with you. And another one is to go to what we're going to be calling the phpcloud.com lunch tables. And if you go there, it's a limited engagement thing. You'll get a cool T-shirt like this. I think you'll actually get one at the Zen booth too, but you don't get lunch at the Zen booth. You've got to eat lunch at tables, and we have tables. So there'll be about 3 tables, I think, set up. It'll say phpcloud.com lunch on it. And you can go and sit there, like I said, limited space, but we'll have people who are involved in the project sitting there and want to pick your brains. So if you don't mind your brains being picked, that'd be a great place to go. A couple of things. I'm actually using conference swag here. It's actually pretty cool. A couple of things. First thing I wanted to talk about, actually before I even get to that, I wanted to thank the ZendCon Advisory Board. These are a group of people who helped me with the content for ZendCon. I actually think that this year we have a very, very strong number of talks. We've got a great number of talks. We've got some of the best speakers and some of the best topics that I think that we've seen in a long time. So I'd like to thank Stefan, Ben Ramsey, Joe Devon, who were our community members who were working on it. Matthew helped, Shahar, Andi, Zev, and I think those are all, I think I might be missing somebody, I don't know. So if you had a great conference, or if you do have a great conference, I would love to know about it. If you don't, you can talk to one of the people on the advisory board. Nothing about passing the buck here. The first thing I wanted to talk about, too, was the Uncon. We have a full-fledged Uncon going on this time, being run by Michelangelo Van Dam. I don't know where he is, but why don't we all give him a hand, because he puts a lot of work into this. Because we've actually got a number of prizes this time. Basically what you do is you deliver an Uncon talk, and then your speaker or your attendees will go to Joined In and rate them. And we have prizes for the first, second, and third place winners. First place winner will win tickets to PHP Benelux in 2012. I think it's in January, I think. Second runner-up will get a ticket to PHP Northwest. And all 3 of them will also be receiving copies of the Zen Framework book, Volume 1 and 2, that we published, so you get a copy of that. Let's see, I don't think there's anything else. Oh, the last thing is that this is being streamed live, and my mom is watching. So I want to say, hi, Mom. And my wife is watching, too, because my mom's actually with my wife helping with the children. So I think say, hi, Laurie, and happy 10th anniversary. I promise I'll be home. So thank my mom and my wife for letting me come out here with a minimal amount of pain. So with that, I'd like to say thank you. Head off to your sessions. Again, we got a DevCloud talk coming up in here as well if you want to take a look at it. But have a great conference. Talk to anybody at Zen, and let's make this a good time.